Hello there. This is Ian Nethercott from the famous Auto Hub show, and this is our one-on-one interview show. So it's not live, even though it says behind us live. It is recorded, but I have had the pleasure of interviewing Luke live in I-80 the first time I was there, and it was a really interesting interview just because I had no idea what to expect, and it was quite a story. It went down quite a rabbit hole. It was kind of remind me a little bit of this YouTube channel I watch now where he goes over famous military heroes and he goes over their crazy stories.
Mm.
And they're like long, crazy, weird stories, but interesting at the same time. So, Luke, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how you got in the car business. If you want the whole interview from NIADA, it is still on YouTube. Definitely watch it. Uh, but, tell us a little bit about how you got into the car business and, I don't know, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, brother. So, my family, excuse me, is kind of a legacy car guy family. My grandfather owned some real estate, did some things, decided I believe it was the early 60s to get into the car business. He bought a Ford franchise, right, and opened a store in Hannibal, New York, which is a real small, kind of a one-horse town. I think they had 20 or 25 new cars. This is back, 50s, 60s. Just a
Yeah.
cool little spot. It was the local Ford dealer. Dad worked for him for a while, and then, of course, as two German father and sons will do. They butted heads, and Dad went to work for Grandpa's competitor, which was the bigger, more metro type dealer, which was still a very country store given our, area. But it was a Ford store in a little bit bigger town. 80 to 100 cars in inventory. And then Dad was at that for 30 or 40 years. And I was kind of the young man that grew up in and around the car business. Grandpa was a car guy. Dad was a car guy. All Dad's buddies were car guys. Everybody that was in and out of the house was car guys. So it's kind of just the culture of cars is what I grew up around. I remember being 7 or 8 years old and cleaning the demonstrator vehicles of all the salespeople at Puro Brothers Ford. And Dad would bring home a trade in. We'd clean it up and sell it out of the front yard. So it was kind of in my blood from an early age. I actually planned to be the one that broke the cycle. I didn't really want to go into the car business only because I thought at the time that it disrupted mom and dad's marriage, but it was mom and dad that disrupted mom and dad's marriage. But mom always blamed it on the car business, the late nights and the snake oil salesman and all that stuff. But long and the short of it is I had a negative view on it. I was going to play football. I had a scholarship to play football, ended up getting injured, lost the scholarship, and then it was kind of forced into work, as opposed to going into academia. And lo and behold, I was offered a job at a car dealership because I was the son of John Lukenheimer, and we found out I was actually pretty darn good at selling cars. So, 18, 19 years old, I sold cars, sold a lot of cars, made some good money, and then at the age of 20, was asked to be a general sales manager of a Ford franchise. So that was kind of, that teed off the golf ball and sent it down the fairway. The rest is history. That's my beginnings in the car business. I've had sabbaticals in and out of it into other realms of sales. There was some early turmoil and addiction history in my young adulthood, but the car business was kind of my destiny. And then later on, I really discovered that I was fond of the car business. And after I kind of went through a rough patch in my life, was given an investment by a friend and an employer at the time to open a car dealership and partner in one. And that was the beginning of CNY Drives. And we fostered that into 3 independent used car dealerships that we own now. And that's the tale, brother.
Well, so used cars, obviously, lots of movies on that topic, including one somewhat recently and historic ones. And I think there was even a character in Matilda, the movie. It was a used car guy. I think
No
Danny DeVito.
kidding.
Yeah, back in the day. And then there's also, I think, that new Cobra Kai. I think that guy from the original Karate Kid movie, he's playing a used car, or sorry, a dealership owner, I think, which is kind of
Okay,
interesting.
Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, Ralph Macchio, which I think is kind of funny, being that I wouldn't have seen that guy doing that. But anyway, it is what it is. Um, Obviously, there's lots of turmoil right now about, cost of cars, whether it be
Mhm.
imported or new or used or parts or this kind of stuff.
Sure.
What's your opinion of the used car game for the last 5 years, and what do you think's coming forward on the used car side?
That's a great question. Post COVID, we've seen a lot, right? Coming into COVID, through COVID, out of COVID, and kind of now in this post COVID world, the PC era, as I call it. A lot has changed, and we went through the whole semiconductor chip shortage, new car supply dropping through the floor, demand for late model used cars going through the roof. I mean, there was a point in time where anybody who got a dealer's license within a 3-year span thought that they were the second coming of the Messiah as far as a used car dealer was concerned, because they thought, well, this business is easy. I don't know what you guys are talking about. All I do is go to the auction, buy it, put it on my lot, it sells for $5,000 more than I. And what they didn't realize is that was a function of the economy at the time and the supply and demand, not their business acumen or their used car talent. So the ones like myself that have kind of weathered the storm and seen it through the thick and thin, from 20 years ago through the present day, I think what we've discovered is good old fashioned supply and demand is a very real thing. When things are in short supply, prices go through the roof. Where I'm an independent, we do an inexpensive used car. You're not going to find much on our lot that's over $30,000. We stick with vehicles anywhere from 8 to 2 years old, things that we can still get decent term and rate on, decent warranty on. But we deal with a lot of subprime buyers in our area. There's a little bit of a depressed income demographic, so we facilitate financing and purchase for those folks. It's very lucrative. When you master that model, it creates a very nice recurring trade cycle with loyal buyers. But we're definitely, so I guess to that point, we're not really feeling the burn so much at the auctions as much as the guys who deal in the real late model stuff. New car market, late model used cars, they fluctuate kind of simultaneously. They move together. But the older used stuff doesn't tend, we're anywhere from 2 to 3 to 10 years off of that cycle. So our supply is still pretty steady at this juncture. It's certainly diminishing a little bit. We're starting to feel it. Where we're really feeling the significant burn is in the fixed operations costs, reconditioning these vehicles, body shop, brakes, tires, suspension, front end, exhaust. Brakes have doubled and tripled in some cases in price, right? So when your profitability model has been shaken in a way that, the fixed cost of reconditioning a used car has been X, and now it's X plus 3, carry the 2 times 4, it tends to make things a little more difficult. But what I have noticed is, and I don't know if you've seen this as well or have other dealers that have, is the whole COVID scenario really loosened up the consumer, right? Pre-COVID, people would come into a car dealership and they would tell you what they're going to pay. And if you didn't want to do it, they would walk and they would go to the next dealer until somebody got close to their number and they stood on a soapbox, when they were telling you what they wanted to pay. Now there's still kind of that aura of, I don't want to lose this one, that there's not 10 more of this like it out there. So we're in a better position to command more money for the car. Book values are certainly up in our, kind of in our area, our echelon of automobile, but we've definitely felt the burn of the parts cost. That's for sure. So, you ask forecasting forward, what do I see? I think we're in for some more turmoil. I think the tariffs that are coming, I don't think, there's the doomsday prophets and the alarmists, right? Oh, the tariffs are coming and it's going to ruin us and we're going to go out. No, you're an entrepreneur. You adapt and overcome. People need cars. They need to drive places. Nothing is going to diminish the demand for an automobile. Oh, General Motors is going to stop making internal combustion engines by 2030. To which I said, no, they're not. And they said, they announced it. I said, yeah, great. And, the Reverend Jesse Jackson also announced his campaign for presidency. And we saw how that worked out several years ago, right? So, the media loves to sensationalize and they love to try to create weather patterns within the economy based on headlines. But those of us who have common sense and logic can pretty much deduce that, well, something's going to happen. We're going to need to respond accordingly. And if we use logic, common sense, and good moral compass, we'll be able to weather the storm as long as we have salespeople that can close deals. And that's really the linchpin as far as I'm concerned. No matter what's going on, if you've got a strong sales force that knows how to communicate present economic circumstances to the customer in a compassionate way, you're going to be in business. So I guess that's what I would say regarding what is to come.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to some dealers on both sides of the border. I talked to a friend of mine who runs a Cadillac store in New Jersey. Talked to a friend of mine who runs a Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram store here locally. Talked to a couple of friends of mine, both in the U.S. and Canada, yesterday about tariffs because they're all over me. I'm actually going to be doing another show on tariffs next month because there's so much interest. And I heard all kinds of thoughts. I mean, one of them I heard in the Canadian market was, well, our used car prices are going to drop because no one's going to export because there's a tariff. And then I heard in the US going, oh, used car prices are going to go up because there's going to be less supply. But to your point, and it's interesting with the twist on interest rate deduction for new cars, which I thought was also an interesting twist. Um, General Motors, and I talked to a buddy of mine who runs a Cadillac store, and he said General Motors had this belief that 40% of luxury car buyers want an electric Cadillac. Well, only 6% want an electric Cadillac. So what are we doing with all these cars that nobody wants? Number one. And number two, what's your thought? And they were talking to the brass from GM. And he said, they don't know. They're going to take a wait and see approach.
Oh, good Lord. A wait and see approach. I'd love to meet the focus group that said that nearly half of the buyers want a battery the size of a Delta in their car. And then I'd also like to meet the guy that says wait and see approach is a realistic term. That just says I don't know. Like if I'm hearing that conversation, all I heard, the closed caption at the bottom of the screen just said, we don't frickin' know. We're just going to wait and see. That's, oh my God, that's pitiful.
Yeah, it's like Nissan. They're running out of money. So what's their brilliant plan? Let's launch a bunch of new models.
Yeah. Why not? Spend a bunch of money, build a bunch of
Roll
stuff.
the dice.
Yeah, right.
So,
Oh my
you
Lord.
know, it was kind of funny, but the funnier thing I think, and it was interesting because I did a show on Monday, I think it was. This week's been a blur. I think it was on Monday on the terrace before they landed. And there was I think it was a piece that I used to start the show on the news about the volume of imported autos. And I was a little shocked by the numbers because there's all this, oh, Canada's doing this and Mexico's doing that and
Mhm.
America's doing this. And I'm like, okay, so how many cars are imported from Mexico in terms of dollar value, do you think?
Mhm. Oh, how many do I
60.
think? I don't know. I would say, I couldn't even make an educated guess. If you could give me the total amount of cars imported into the U.S. in a fiscal year, I could probably guesstimate that Mexico might be 20% of that. That would be my guess.
$66.1 billion every year.
Okay.
What do you think Canada is in reference to that? Like how big or
New
small?
automobiles?
Yeah, new cars.
I haven't the slightest. My intuition would tell me, based on the spin the media has been putting on it, that would be significantly smaller.
Yeah,
But then, I would have to say, I mean, I don't know, 5 to 10% of the total. So maybe 5 billion,
19 billion roughly. I think it
19
was 16
billion.
or
Okay.
17. Could be wrong.
Okay.
16 or 17. Check out the
Okay.
show from Monday. It was from Fox News, so I'm not sure how they referenced it, but it's something like one third
Okay.
of the
One
of
third.
the Mexican. So the thing that was funny is I'm saying, okay, so I've got a car. Let's just say that it's a U.S. made car in
Mhm.
theory. So it's just a Chevrolet to pick a brand. Where's that car actually assembled and made? And
Kind of
how
like
many
your
parts
Toyotas
are
with,
local? I don't
yeah,
know. So it was
right.
kind of interesting because I'm looking at it going, okay, how do you enforce that? But more importantly, when you look at the used car side, to your point,
Yep.
uh, people need to drive something. They're
Mhm.
not going to stop driving something. They may have to have an older car
Mhm.
because obviously they can't afford a newer one because of price point.
Mhm.
But more importantly, I think there's an upper range to what you can charge. And we test that during the pandemic with new cars and probably with used. And I know Trump was already threatening people saying, you can't raise the prices because I'm doing a tariff. And I'm sitting there going, you don't understand how tariffs work, do you?
Yeah. It's kind of exactly what's going to have to happen potentially.
But used car prices are part of it, but also parts is another thing that people have really not focused on in the media. Is if I'm fixing my car that maybe I've had for 10 years,
Mhm.
if I'm going to continue to fix it, which I can do, that's going to get more expensive. So I think there's opportunities within the tea leaves around, prepaid maintenance programs, maybe some sort of program where, you're set special pricing for some reason, or there's
Yeah.
other ideas here that can happen for people that maybe have to keep a car longer. But more importantly, service retention, I think, is going to be a huge piece because if I'm
Yes.
keeping a car 10, 12 years, yeah, I got to fix it. But also the tax deductible thing. I had a talk with this dealer about this yesterday, and he goes, "Yeah, I used to lease Escalades. Now I can finance it and they can write it off."
Yeah.
And I
That's a
was
great
like,
point.
"It's really interesting." So,
It is,
I,
man. Regarding the parts piece there, you made an interesting comment about some sort of maintenance program. I think the consumers would respond well to some sort of program that ensured that the cost of a brake job, a tire swap, an alignment, an oil change, et cetera, did not graduate to an unmanageable degree and would almost be willing to pay. Like, listen, we know that we're going to have this, this delta or this change rather over this period of time. Let's mitigate that now. And for this particular fixed monthly cost, we can guarantee you a brake job at this mileage, an alignment at this mileage, so on and so forth. I think you're onto something there. I think if somebody were to cultivate that idea, that it would certainly be profitable. Obviously, if it was managed correctly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I always compared it when I worked for Nissan to food costs. I talked to dealers. I'm like, why aren't you selling prepaid maintenance? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, so if I could lock in your food costs today for the
Yeah,
next 5 years, would you want to do that, or you want to pay the whatever the egg price is going to be next week? Like what do you want to
100%.
do? And it's funny now, fast forwarding maybe 8 or 9 years or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
That's even truer today. Like if you said that to like a grocery customer, going, "Oh yeah, you want to just hope bacon is cheap next week."
Yeah, 100%. And you could even anticipate the change. The selling point would be, and that's where I look at everything as a guy that trains salespeople. Selling point is going to be, okay, let's look at the trajectory, and you pull out your graph. Egg prices, or for in this particular situation, parts prices. Brake prices were here pre-COVID. Brake prices are here post-COVID. Brake prices are here now pre-tariffs. Brake prices are projected to go here. So if we average out what the cost is going to be over this time frame and divide that out, we can guarantee you that number minus a little bit for paying ahead of time. And the idea there obviously is all the money up front, in an interest-bearing account would net you profit. But furthermore, let's say the corrective action is taken and the prices do not graduate to those insane amounts. The difference is then profit at that point because they're under contract. So I think you might want to develop that, dude. You're onto something.
Absolutely. So, in addition to selling used cars and training salespeople, I mean, when you're helping train salespeople, whether it's for your own companies or for other companies, like how does that work? Like, how did you get into that, and what's that? What's going on there?
I love telling this story because it's like pulling the curtain and showing the wizard. It's just a goofy old guy with curly hair with flip flops on, right? So the reality is, man, that I am a very compassionate and tenacious car dealer. I love the car business. It's bred into me. But what I learned over time, and we're talking my dealerships were opened in the mid teens, 15, 16. And, here we are nearly a decade later, and we're kind of the if you were to put a label on it, we would be probably the number one fastest growing independent used car dealer group. That also has really, really high customer satisfaction in a cheaper used car. So we kind of pride ourselves in being the professionals, not just the smash and grab used car dealer. So we have graduated very significantly over the years, and the company has grown. But what I have learned is that's not because I'm a good car dealer. Okay. So what I mean by that is, when we talk about inventory turn, our numbers are great. When we talk about marketing, all the indicators, all the KPIs across the board are all tremendous. But when, vendors come in and they kind of observe our processes, they're like, dude, you must be really lucky or just, I don't know. And it's like, well, what do you mean? And then we get talking, and what I'm getting to is I've not had a significant education in how to be a good car dealer. I was a fly by the seat of my pants manager when I was younger because I went through three
Yeah.
company buyouts, and I never really got the appropriate education. So when I went to NIADA and gave that talk when you and I spoke the first time we did the show in 23, I was
Yeah.
discovering a lot and learning a lot. And what I learned, and it really kind of the precipice was really kind of that time when we first got acquainted. I realized I'm not really that good of a car dealer. I'm just really good at training guys to close deals. We get X amount of traffic so our rate of travel on our floor was actually lower than my competitors, but we were selling more cars. So I had to investigate that. And what I learned is our closing ratio and our gross per copy was tremendously higher than industry average. And, some of that comes at acquisition. They say you make the money when you buy the car. But in all reality, getting maximum back end, getting full selling price for the car, being able to take in trade-ins behind the money, these were all things that we excelled at magnificently. And this is not a braggadocio session. This is just, if anything, I'm saying that I'm probably underqualified to be a car dealer. So what I did basically, excuse me, is I said, one of the things that one of my greatest mentors told me is, Luke, if you want to be successful in business, you put people to their highest and best use, right? You don't have the guy that's your best paint corrector shoveling snow on the sidewalk. You have him correcting paint, right? And you don't take your most valuable building that's in a residential area and turn it into a warehouse or storage. You turn it into apartments, right? So what I learned is that my highest and best use was not in running the dealership. It wasn't in acquisition. It wasn't in marketing. It wasn't in operate. It was in making sure my guys were ruthless sales assassins that closed everything with a pulse that walked through the door. And I was tremendous at doing that. So what I did was I said, well, I'd like to have a model where I could just plug salespeople in and pull them out and put them on the floor and they're ready to go. So I got a hold of a gentleman in Las Vegas, Nevada by the name of Brad Lee, who owns a company that creates online training platforms. It's the same guy that, did Andy Elliott's online platform, Grant Cardone's, all the biggest names in sales training. And I said, well, I want to be the best. So I want to get with that guy and I want to make my online platform there. And I took a fundamentally different approach to it. I didn't take a talk training approach to it and say, we're going to teach them the right thing to say. I said, we're going to teach them the right mindset to be in. We're going to educate them about why the buyer does what they do. And we're going to educate them on how to effectively communicate where they need to get to conversationally, not with cute word tracks and one-liners, right? Because we live in an ecosystem now, a marketplace where the buyer's much wiser. Their propensity to spot BS is very high, and they just want conversational selling, right? So long story short, I basically said my highest and best use is not as a car dealer. So I did some interviewing. I met with some people. I got some coaching, and I hired a CEO, a general manager, office, staff that are kind of, that are not interchangeable. That's not the word I'm looking for. I've implemented them in exchange for my singular presence. We got 2 or 3 very capable people. I took a significant pay cut from my companies and put a lot more money into the companies and said, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take a crack at this sales training thing. And I tell you, that's my calling, man. This is where I excel. And I'm able to replicate for other car dealers exactly what we've done at CNY Drives. And the outcome is tremendous. And we're really, really excited about what we're doing.
They're using the buy back your time principle. That's a good principle.
1000%.
Yeah, there's a guy, I think he's in the SaaS business. He has a book. His name is Tim Martell. He has a book called Buy Back Your Time. And he says 100% doing it yourself is fine, but 80% done for you is actually better.
That is, truer words were never spoken. I want to give a little knowledge drop for the listeners here. This is what one of my mentors, and probably my primary mentor, told me. He says, Luke, he says, you're running a business right now. He says, you want to own a company. He says, and the way to graduate from running a business to owning a company is it's an understanding that when you run a business, if you leave for a vacation for 10 days, when you come back, you got to grab all the strings and pull them back together and tie them up and hold them again, because you're the glue that holds the place together. He says, but when you own and operate a company and you do it effectively, you'll be able to leave your company for a year. And when you return, it will be better and more profitable with better culture than when you left it. And that is a function of team building. So, two things to take away from that is, number one, your highest and best use is always going to serve you best. And if it's not in being in the chair position in your company, then you should find somebody who is and humble yourself. Because I can tell you, and it takes some humility to say this, Ian, but I can tell you that as the president of the company, the owner operator, we were very profitable. We did very well. Since I have stepped away and taken a percentage pay cut and installed different leadership, I now make more money with a smaller percentage of my company that I'm not running, because we have better leadership, just better overall leaders in the car business, better overall inventory acquisition, just all the KPIs are better now. And now we do it at scale, right? More mechanics, more salespeople. And it took me having to be humble and step back and say, maybe I'm just not the best at everything here. Let's give it a try. And, so it took some risk and being, comfortable with a significant amount of risk. And the upside has been tremendous. So now I get to focus on what I love. I get to truly help people, which we still did selling, subprime used cars of good quality to people who wouldn't normally get that level of quality. But, I sleep at night knowing that I'm helping people increase their paycheck, and doing it for half of what most sales trainers do is very, very, very fulfilling. So there's a ton of truth to what you just said.
Fantastic. I agree. Um, so someone wants sales training. Maybe they're sick of the normal word tracks or word salad or 1980s lingo, uh, or all the above. I've probably done sales training with most of these guys. Anyway, how do they find out about it? Yeah, how do they get started? What does that cost? What's the ROI? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah. So they can go to, we got ads out on Meta and YouTube and Google AdWords and all that stuff. But really, basically, the fundamental things are this. We don't teach people what to say, right? I've kind of gone over previously what we optimize for in our sales training. But here's what we find, especially in the auto dealer world. Now, we train across all different industries and verticals. But as you can imagine, my heart lies in the automotive sector because of where I come from. And what we discover is every dealership suffers from the same thing. They've got one or two horses, real strong producers, they're 30 or 40 car guys, and then they've got a harem, a stable full of 8.5 to 11.5 car guys, right? And it's every freaking dealership. And the reason for that is there is this perpetual cycle of instilling confidence into the top producers, right? They get the leads, they get the house deals. And even if that's not the case, they still get viewed as the authority in that dealership, the guys that can either come in a few minutes late and not get yelled at, or are there an hour early every time for good reason. My point is, it doesn't matter the nuance of the situation. You got one or two key guys that are the key guys. The rest of the troops are never going to feel like they can graduate to that place. They're always going to have an excuse for why it can't be done. They're always going to have a reason. It's talent, it's this, it's that. What we are incredibly effective at doing is going in and altering the culture and the mindset of the entire sales team, including management, including ownership. Okay. And it takes humility, which is the most difficult part, brother, because you'd be amazed at how many 8.5 car guys think they are just the best thing since sliced bread. Right. And there's a reason I'm not selling. It's the leads, and it's this, and it's that guy's fault, and every other thing. Right. So you got to purge the cancer from the showroom floor. You then have to install new company culture that it helps them. As long as you can convince a sales team that following the progress that or the process rather, that you're instilling into that dealership is going to create more money for them, and it's not going to reward the already rewarded performers. Basically meaning this, you got to show them that the tables are even now, that everybody has an equal shot at the top. And you do that with culture, right? And then you install frameworks, right? We have frameworks that we install where truly, and the beautiful part about P2P is we don't just come in and talk. We do it. We run sales with the team. We'll put on the dealership's polo, and we'll go out and we'll TO deals and sell cart right there with them, show them the framework working as we're training it to them, because that's the only thing that's going to make a salesperson walk away going, damn, that does work, right? So that's one unique way that we train. Another thing that we do is perpetuity. We don't just come in and bless you with our online training and give you a shot in the arm of motivation and then hightail it back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Scottsdale, Arizona, where we came from. We're with those teams in perpetuity every week on weekly coaching calls. And there's many different calls, so differing schedules amongst the team. They can come to different calls, and we stay with the management, and we stay with the sales staff, and we continue to cultivate that culture in their showroom over time. And what you end up getting is a team of salespeople who feel like life is fair now. The sales floor is a fair, equal territory. You get a sales team that is proud because guys that were doing 8.5 are now doing 17, and the horses are still the horses, but the guys that weren't quite the performers are okay with them doing 40 because they're not doing 4 anymore. They're doing 14, 17, 23. And you end up with an entire team. And if you look at it from a percentage standpoint, you got guys that are executing at 100% and guys that are executing at 45%. When we're done with that sales team, the entire team is 75 to 80%, but you've still got the guys operating at 100%. It's a very unique way that we do it. It's fundamentally different than any other sales training out there. And we are the only sales training company in the automotive space, in the world, as far as I know so far, that actually guarantees a monetary result. So we don't just come in and tell you that we're going to bring you sales training. We actually audit your process, we audit your numbers, and we say, okay, based on what you're doing now, we can get you a minimum 10, 12, 15, 18, 9, 13% increase in your overall sales volume. And if we don't do that, sign right here. And if we don't, you get all your money back in 12 months. And we absolutely put that in black and white. And we have yet to refund anybody, brother. So we're on to something. We're excited about it. And if people want to learn more or maybe have a conversation about it, they just go to paidtopersuade.com. The word paid, the number 2, the word persuade.com, or they can check me out on social media. It's at Luke Lunk, Lukelunk. And we give free sales tips every day that are actionable. They're tangible. So they can learn a little something for free as well.
Fantastic. Great to hear. So details will be below. Obviously, feel free to reach out to Luke. You can definitely check out his interview from a couple of years ago. There's a little bit more to the story. I won't spoil it. Definitely watch it. And also, if you're looking for results in your store and you actually want someone who isn't just interested in word tracks, reach out to Luke, because he's actually done the job as well. So he's not just some guy who hasn't sold cars since 1982. So you can actually and actually had a dealer, believe it or not, I met Eddie years ago, who had Grant Cardone's VHS tapes from the 80s converted to DVD so his team could still use them. And I'm like,
boy, that's just holding on for dear life, man. That's
not to beat up Grant, but why?
Because it's comfort, Ian. Really, to answer your question, it's comfort. You know, a lot of dealers are creatures of comfort, and they know what worked for them a long time ago. And listen, I've met Grant. I've spent time with Jared Glant, his president of his sales training. They're hard workers, man. You can't take anything away from those guys. They saturated a marketplace and they owned it, right? But things change. And they change significantly. The same reason NASA and Blue Origin are not flying the majority of the rockets and saving the people in the space station. It's Elon Musk. It's because things have changed and certain people change with that and they develop further. You know, we are optimized. We didn't even come to fruition until 2023. So our experience has only been in the present marketplace. So one of the major benefits about doing business with us is we are not jaded by the sales training of the past. We cultivated our method in the here and the now and have done nothing but iterate. So, and there's that little last thing that we mentioned, that we're the only sales training company that guarantees our results. That should speak from the rooftops. So, but no need to convert our VHS to DVD.
The one to pray about close doesn't work. Just so you know.
The which one?
The one to pray about it close.
Want to pray about it? Yeah, I haven't had good luck with that either.
I've consumed a lot of sales training content over the years, but the one that always sticks in mind is this one. And this is I'll leave this. It's a 1980s quote one. So it's obviously written from the deep south. So I want to make sure you're making the right decision. So let's pray about it together.
Okay.
Whatever God decides, we'll do that.
All right. And who dictates what God decided? I'm assuming the salesperson.
I mean, I was like, listen to this, and I'm like, you're kidding me, right? You want me to actually run through with that? No way.
Somebody somewhere along the way did, brother. But you know what's even more incredible and really just insane about that is if the dealer's listening right now, stop and think about the history of sales training. It's overcoming objections, right?
Yep.
Like if you ask anybody, what do you need to do to be a strong sales? Well, you got to be able to overcome objections, man. I want to think about it. I got to talk to my wife. If the payment's too high, my trade-in's not enough. Like, if somebody would have just spent the time to sit down and create a framework that would flush out and solve for objections at the outset of the conversation in a very rigorous qualification process, as opposed to getting blindsided by what we know are just smokescreen words at the end of the sale, that person would probably create a really effective sales training. And lucky for the world, yours truly, obviously I'm being a wise guy, but listen, man, Paid to Persuade, we optimize in flushing out all objections at the outset of the conversation to what we call a non-objectionable close. And we do it in something called the Big Three framework. And every substrata of that, there's no there's no framed questions. It's not you say this if they say that. There's no word tracks. It's literally just conversational selling through what we call compassionate interrogation, finding out all the information at the outset. And if you find out there's a third party involved, we have frameworks to solve for that. If you find out there's a money issue, we have frameworks and ranges to solve for that. And it's literally it's just a traditional funneling of a sales conversation. We start here, and like a kitten with a ball of yarn, we get down to here, and it's done in a way that is so cohesive with human nature that the customer actually wants it to progress because of the way that you manipulate dopamine, the way you manipulate the questions. It's really quite incredible. And I'm very proud of what we've done, man. I'm not trying to get a shameless plug here, but anybody who needs sales training, I would strongly encourage them to at least take a look because it's really fundamentally different what we do.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the clarity. And I agree 100%. I mean, it's really about framework. But as you said, there's only really 5 reasons people don't buy cars, and 4 of them were the same when they bought horses.
That's very true. So we
And
call it the triple
it's not
threat.
new. Like these aren't new ideas. Like
No, it's not. You know what I do? I do an exercise, Ian, with salespeople that I'm training. I say, okay, everybody in the room, there's 40 guys in a room, right? Including the managers, the ownership, even the service writers, whoever. Give me your worst objection. Want to talk to my wife. Okay, you want to think about it. Okay, you, payment's too high. Okay, you, checks in the mail. Okay, ding, 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 ding. You go through 40 guys. And before I ask, I take 3 Post-it notes and I write 3 things and I stick them to the wall so they can see that they've been there the whole time. And when I get done, I go through all these objections and I separate them into 3 piles. And then I pull off the wall the 3 things, and it's what we call the triple threat: time, money, and third party. Unless it's a product-based objection, which I can't train because I'm not the Ford factory guy, right? But unless it's a product or warranty-based objection, every objection is rooted in the triple threat: time, money, or third party. So when you train a salesperson to confidently and, more importantly, conversationally flush out if time, money, or third party are an issue, and then all it is just optimizing the route of the sale. If there is a third party, you issue a time gate, and the time gate solves for whether or not that customer can engage without their spouse or third party if a financial incentive is involved. And if you discover that they can't and there's truly no deal there, you can very quickly optimize for follow-up, following up the right way, guaranteeing yourself a future appointment because you know there's absolutely no deal, that maybe there's no capability to pay, maybe the spouse is not, contactable, and that's an absolute concrete stop for a deal. You have to optimize for that. But what you find is 8 times out of 10, when you introduce a financial incentive, it's like, well, I mean, if it was really that good, I could call her. Okay, no problem. We don't need a decision now. Just want to know if that was a possibility. And then you move to the sale. And then what can never happen is when you get to the end of the sale and you ask for a commitment, they can never say, well, I got to talk to my wife. Or if they do, it's, well, you mentioned earlier on, we could give her a call. You know what? I did say that. Let's give her a call. Solving the objections at the outside of the conversation is an art form that we've perfected, and it has fundamentally changed the way salespeople sell. That's why we get the outcomes that we do. The most recent dealership that we trained got a 40% increase in sales volume. Now, that's certainly above average, but it's just a testament to when you're doing it the wrong way and you introduce the right way, it can be a fundamental change for your store. So thanks for the shameless plug, Mr. Nethercutt.
no worries. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that's interesting about selling any product, doesn't matter the product. There's really only 8 to 12 total objections for any product sold on planet Earth to anybody. And you could probably distill that down to 4 to 6, but 8 to 12 that's the max list. The funny thing, and the thing you brought up, number 1, if you can preempt that, it helps. But number 2, if you don't even know what those are, you got a big problem. Like if you're selling for a living and you don't even know what those are, you're in trouble. And I think that's really
100%.
what salesmen really have to. Well, anyone doing anything, if you want to become a master at your profession, whether it be karate, whether it be in military, whether it be football, whether it be sales, you've got to be a student of the industry, and you got to be a student of the current industry, because what was true 25, 30 years ago when I started selling and what's true today is not the same thing. It's really
Very
not.
true. Yep. And
I mean,
to
it's
kind of
different,
augment
right?
it is everything is evolving, everything at all times constant. That's the nature of the universe, right? And if we don't evolve with it, we will eventually arrive at a disadvantage. And just to augment what you're saying, if you want to receive that maximum efficacy, you also have to be selling in an industry that you enjoy. You can't be selling watches and hate watches, right? So if you can get somebody, you talk to most car sales guys, why are you a car salesman? Well, because I heard you could make a lot of money selling without a college degree and I like cars. Is that not always the response response that you get from a salesperson, right? It's either that or I got fired from such and such, and so, the general manager, always got bread at the bakery that I worked at, and he told me that I'd be good at selling cars if I ever decided to do it, to give him a call. It's either that, and you're chuckling because you know it's true. It's either that, I worked somewhere the general manager does business, and he told me, he gave me his card, and that's usually the guy that can never sell, just to be truthful.
Yeah.
But or
Or
it's
fell
the guy that
into it.
says,
It was by accident. Yeah.
yeah. Or the guy that just, said that I heard I could make a bunch of money selling and I didn't need a college degree, and I decided I liked cars, so I figured I would try cars. And, those guys make the best salespeople once they understand that sales is not what everybody thinks it is. Everybody thinks that sales is go show a product, build some rapport, demonstrate the product in a very verbose and illustrative way, get the customer excited, get them emotional, and then strike while the iron's hot. And if they push back, overcome objections until you get the deal. Like literally everybody listening right now, not literally, maybe 95% are like, well, yeah, well, what's the problem? It's like, that's like going to the doctor's office and the doctor going, hey, how you doing? I'm good. I've kind of got the sniffles. No, shh, what? Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. Well, I'm sorry. Take the medicine. Call me tomorrow. Well, I didn't even tell you what's wrong yet. Doesn't matter. Try the product, try the offering, and then we'll talk about it later. It's like there's nowhere else in the world where we do things this way. Why are we selling this way? Here, take the product. Then tell me what's wrong and we'll try to figure it out. It's like, no, let's deduce, let's triage, let's talk about symptoms, let's talk about intent, let's talk about buying power, let's talk about all these things as we're gently walking around the car to keep your interest in your audio and your or not your olfactory, but your visual sense stimulated. And then once we realize there's actually a possibility of doing business here, we'll go on our test drive and we'll ask you to buy something. And when people understand that if they fundamentally shift the way they handle that sales process, that their level of efficacy goes through the roof and they watch it happen in front of them, their lives are changed forever and they become truly elite level salespeople because they understand. And comprehension is the root of execution. So once they actually understand, they can become tremendously productive salespeople.
100%. Thanks for your time today. Details will be below. Reach out to Luke. I'm sure he's got some insight and some free tips, but more importantly, he can actually help all your salespeople be better versus replacing the bottom, replacing the bottom, replacing the bottom, replacing the bottom, which is pretty much the story everywhere else. And have yourself a great weekend. If you are watching this recorded, you can definitely watch the other review. I'll link that below. It'll be on the end of this reel. But also, if you're doing service MPIs, we're doing a video one today, live show on service video. So shooting video in service, shocking. And we'll be doing a show next month on tariffs. So if you're interested in that challenging issue, feel free to join in, but it'll be an interesting show for sure. And there's lots of interest in this right now. And have yourself a great day. Thanks very much.